Have you ever been called too negative simply because you didn't agree with the majority? Or labeled as someone who lacks faith in life just because you chose to set clear boundaries for yourself? If you have, you're not alone. As adults, especially as women who are learning to trust our own voice, we often find ourselves walking a thin line between being seen as aware versus being misunderstood as cynical. In many conversations, I've noticed how quickly people confuse realism with pessimism. The moment you point out a potential risk or question an overly idealistic plan, you're no longer seen as thoughtful, you're seen as the negative one. But being aware of problems doesn't mean you're consumed by them. It simply means you're paying attention. The truth is, we live in a culture that sometimes overvalued positivity, even when it's forced. Just think positive becomes a blanket response to complex issues, and anyone who challenges that with grounded thinking is seen as disruptive, difficult, or even depressing. But is it really so wrong to want to see things clearly? There's a big difference between someone who refuses to hope and someone who chooses to hope with their eyes open. One shuts down at the first sign of difficulty. The other prepares for it while still choosing to move forward. In this video, I want to explore the fine but important distinction between living with clarity and living with negativity, because they are not the same. The subtle but powerful difference between being aware and being negative. In a culture that often demands cheerfulness over clarity, it's no surprise that many people confuse awareness with negativity. When you start asking deeper questions or choosing not to follow the crowd, some may label you as skeptical, cold, or difficult. But there is a vast difference between living with awareness and living with pessimism, a difference that can quietly, but profoundly shape the quality of your life. Awareness is not about assuming the worst. It's not about standing in a room and pointing out everything that could go wrong. Instead, it's about grounding yourself in what is true, especially when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Being aware means being awake. It means paying attention to patterns of your own and the world's. It means noticing what drains your energy, what brings you peace, and what pushes you away from yourself. Awareness says, I see what's happening, and I choose to respond with intention. Negativity, on the other hand, often comes from fear of disappointment, of failure, of vulnerability. A negative mindset tends to shut things down before they start. It doubts possibilities before they have room to breathe. It mistakes self-protection for self-sabotage. A person stuck in negativity might look at a challenge and say, why bother? It won't work anyway. But someone living with awareness might look at the same situation and ask, what are the risks? And what support do I need to try this in a way that honors my limits? The key difference is this: awareness opens the door to aligned action. Negativity shuts it before you even reach the handle. Here's a simple example. Let's say you're offered an opportunity, a job, a partnership, move. An aware person might pause and say, I'm curious, but I'll ask more questions before saying yes. I want to understand what I'm stepping into. That's discernment. A negative person might say, there's no point. All jobs are exhausting. People just take advantage of you anyway. That's resignation. The aware person isn't afraid to say no, but their no is rooted in values, not fear. They don't say no to life. They say no to what doesn't serve them. That's a huge difference. Because behind that clarity, there's still openness, still movement, still hope. And for many of us, especially as women, reaching that kind of clarity can feel like rebellion. We're raised to be agreeable, accommodating, and easy to work with. We're often rewarded for being quiet rather than curious, for being pleasant rather than precise. So when we begin to set boundaries or ask uncomfortable questions, it can rattle people, especially those who benefited from our silence. But again, that doesn't mean we're negative. It means we're no longer willing to be asleep. Living with awareness also means learning to hold contradictions. You can be hopeful and cautious. You can be loving and direct. You can believe in growth while still acknowledging limitations. This isn't about choosing between optimism and realism. It's about integrating both. It's about being able to say, yes, this is hard and I can still find a way to move through it with integrity. Awareness gives you that ability to see the full picture without shrinking your power. It also invites self-responsibility. When you live aware, you stop waiting for someone else to change the circumstances before you allow yourself to feel safe, or confident, or empowered. You realize that while you can't control everything, you can control your responses. You can control what you say yes to. You can control what you no longer tolerate. And that's not negativity, it's emotional maturity. People often think that awareness makes life heavier, but in truth, it makes life lighter because you stop caring about what isn't yours. You stop pretending to be okay with things that make you small. You stop chasing validation from people who misunderstand you. And you start aligning your life with what actually matters to you, not just what looks good on paper. Does this mean you'll always be understood? No, some people will still call your clarity coldness. Your self-trust might look like arrogance to those who depend on your self-doubt. But part of awareness is learning to be okay with that. Not everyone has to understand you for your life to be valid. Your awareness is not up for public debate. In fact, one of the most empowering shifts you can make is realizing that your ability to see clearly doesn't need to be defended. You're not obligated to explain every boundary or justify every decision. You are allowed to know yourself well enough to act accordingly without apology. So the next time you catch yourself wondering, am I being negative or just clear? Ask yourself this: is this thought rooted in fear or in truth? Am I pulling back because something feels misaligned or because I'm afraid to be disappointed? Is this a boundary or a wall? Am I shutting down or simply choosing wisely? Because when you look closely, you'll find that awareness and hope are not opposites. In fact, awareness is what makes hope sustainable. Hope without awareness becomes fantasy. But hope built on awareness, that's resilience. That's strength. As the saying goes, hope is not pretending nothing will go wrong. It's knowing things will and choosing to move forward anyway. That kind of hope isn't passive, it's active. It's built from real eyes and a steady heart. And it's what makes the difference between living a life that looks good and living a life that feels true. So no, being aware is not being negative. It's being brave. It's being awake. And most of all, it's being alive on purpose. 2, why do we often confuse awareness with negativity? In many adult conversations, especially in workplaces, group dynamics, or even family settings, it's not uncommon for people to confuse clear-eyed awareness with negativity. But why does this misunderstanding happen so easily? What makes it so difficult for many to see that being honest or cautious isn't the same as being pessimistic? One of the most common reasons is the growing culture of toxic positivity. This is the belief that we must stay cheerful no matter what, that expressing discomfort or doubt is somehow a sign of weakness. In this environment, even valid concerns can be labeled as complaints, and honest observations can be viewed as bringing the mood down. While optimism can be beautiful and necessary, forcing positivity at all costs can be damaging. It leaves little room for nuance and little space for truth. Another reason is that people who choose to live with awareness are often in the minority. And speaking a different truth, especially one that challenges the popular narrative, can feel uncomfortable for others. It takes courage to say something unpopular, even when it's meant to be constructive. In meetings, for example, the person who dares to ask whether a project is truly feasible may be labeled as difficult or negative, even though their intention is to help the group avoid false hope or poor planning. Their clarity is misread as criticism, and their awareness is mistaken for resistance. Social politeness also plays a part. Many of us are taught that being agreeable is part of being nice, and that questioning things openly is impolite. As adults, this can manifest in avoidance of difficult truths. We learn to bite our tongues, nod along, or suppress gut instincts just to maintain harmony. But harmony built on avoidance isn't real harmony. It's just silence in disguise. From a woman's perspective, this confusion can feel particularly frustrating. Many of us have been conditioned to prioritize emotional safety in the room, to smooth over discomfort, to carry the emotional labor of peacekeeping. When we break that pattern and choose honesty over appeasement, it can trigger resistance. Yet, it's not negative to speak with clarity. It's not rude to have a boundary. In fact, it's one of the most mature forms of self-respect. The truth is, awareness doesn't cancel out hope. It builds a foundation under it. Awareness doesn't mean expecting the worst. It means preparing wisely, asking the right questions, and protecting your energy from avoidable harm. It's choosing depth over decoration. Understanding this difference between toxic positivity and genuine optimism, between surface harmony and real understanding frees us. It helps us stop apologizing for our clarity. It allows us to take up space in rooms that prefer silence. And it reminds us that asking hard questions isn't a sign of doubt, it's a sign of care. 3. The difference in mindset. Awareness versus negativity. At first glance, a cautious person and a negative person might look similar. Both may hesitate before saying yes, both might raise questions, and both may seem reserved in unfamiliar situations. But if we look closer, their intentions and results are often worlds apart. A self-aware person understands their own limits. They're not afraid to say no to things that don't align with their values, capacity, or time. This isn't avoidance, it's respect for themselves. In contrast, a negative person tends to see everything as futile. They say no, not because they've assessed the situation thoughtfully, but because they already assume it will fail. Similarly, an aware person asks questions to learn more. When something doesn't sit right, they explore it not to tear it down, but to understand. A negative person, however, asks questions only to discredit. Their goal is not clarity, but to confirm their belief that nothing will work anyway. Another sign lies in how they view opportunity. A self-aware individual doesn't chase every opportunity blindly, but they remain open, discerning, and willing to act when it feels right. On the other hand, someone stuck in negativity will reject even the best chances not because they're wrong, but because fear has already closed the door. When it comes to risk, a clear-headed person assesses it to make better choices. They acknowledge what could go wrong, but they also ask, what can I do to minimize it? They respond with thoughtful action. In contrast, a negative mindset focuses solely on what could go wrong and uses that as a reason to stay stuck. They don't move because the unknown feels too threatening. Finally, the most subtle difference is in reaction. An aware person sees problems and then tries to solve them. They know life won't always be smooth, and they prepare for that without losing hope. A negative person sees problems and freezes. For them, risk is a stop sign, not a fork in the road. From the outside, awareness and negativity may both look like hesitation. But on the inside, one comes from wisdom, the other from fear. One invites growth, the other avoids it. As adults, especially as women navigating many roles and expectations, learning to tell these two apart is essential. It helps us trust ourselves more, respect others' perspectives without judgment, and take action from a place of stability, not reactivity. Being awake to reality is not the same as being cynical. Awareness helps us stay grounded, while negativity keeps us stuck. In the end, the real difference isn't in what we see, but in what we choose to do next. Why? Is being sober meaningless of having nitrogen monoxide faith? One of the biggest misconceptions about being mentally clear and grounded is the belief that it means having no hope. That once you start living with awareness, you stop believing in good things, but that is far from the truth. Living with awareness doesn't mean becoming cold, distant, or overly skeptical. It doesn't mean you lose your sense of wonder or stop trusting in life. What it actually means is this: I still believe in good things, but I don't blindly believe in everything. That difference changes everything. There is a quiet strength in being aware. It means you are no longer easily swept away by unrealistic expectations or sugar-coated illusions. You are no longer naive, but that doesn't make you negative. You can still hold hope in your heart, just not the kind that pretends nothing will ever go wrong. Real awareness says, I know things can fall apart. I know people can disappoint me, and I choose to move forward anyway. Too often, women who choose to live with clarity are told they are too guarded or that they lack faith. They are told that setting boundaries, or questioning what others accept, means they've become cold. But setting boundaries doesn't come from fear, comes from self-respect. Being careful doesn't mean being cynical. It means choosing what aligns with you instead of letting everything in. Let's be honest, life isn't perfect. Situations aren't always fair, and not everyone you meet will have your best interest at heart. Pretending otherwise isn't hopeful, it's careless. Hope that ignores reality is fragile. It breaks easily. But hope that exists alongside awareness, that's unshakable. That's the kind of hope that lasts. Awareness allows us to pause before reacting, to think before agreeing, to say, let me think about it instead of rushing in. And that pause, that ability to reflect can be misunderstood as mistrust, but it's not. It's maturity. There is a quote that captures this idea beautifully. Hope is not pretending nothing will go wrong. It's knowing things will and choosing to move forward anyway. This isn't just a clever line, it's a life philosophy. It's the quiet daily courage of many women who wake up, knowing things may be uncertain, but choosing to participate fully in life anyway. That's not negativity. That's bravery. To live with awareness is to believe in possibility, but not ignore probability. It's choosing not to wear rose-colored glasses, but not turning everything gray either. It's choosing clarity, not confusion, strength, not softness, disguised as silence. So the next time someone confuses your awareness with negativity, remember, it's not your job to be endlessly hopeful in their way. It's your job to stay grounded in your truth, to protect your peace, and to keep believing in good things with your eyes open. Because awareness isn't the absence of faith. It's the foundation of it. B. Conclusion: inspire action. Living with awareness doesn't mean living without hope. It means choosing to see clearly without turning away from what's uncomfortable. There is a quiet strength in looking at life as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. Too often, we're told that positivity means smiling through pain or ignoring uncertainty. But what if real strength lies in the ability to sit with the truth, even when it's messy, and still move forward? You don't have to deny hardship to live positively. You don't have to pretend everything is fine to be strong. Real clarity begins when we ask ourselves honestly, is this the truth? Or is this my fear speaking? There is a big difference. Truth gives you direction. Fear keeps you stuck. And in many situations, it's not that life is impossible. It's that we haven't yet learned to trust our ability to navigate it with open eyes. Sometimes, when you set a boundary, people say you've changed. When you speak with clarity, others might call you difficult. When you ask questions, someone might label you negative. But none of those things define who you are. What matters is your intention. Are you moving from bitterness or from self-respect? Are you reacting or responding with awareness? It's important to pause and reflect, especially in moments when your mindset is being questioned. One practice that helps me is journaling a simple thought at the end of the day. Today, what did I stay awake to? Maybe I noticed my own limits. Maybe I said no to something that used to drain me. Maybe I caught myself falling into an old pattern and chose differently. These small recognitions are proof that you are not sleepwalking through life. They are evidence that you are living awake. Hope in this light isn't naive. It isn't pretending bad things won't happen. As one quote beautifully puts it, hope is not pretending nothing will go wrong. It's knowing things will and choosing to move forward anyway. That's a kind of hope built not on fantasy, but on awareness. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's grounded and it's real. So if you've ever been told that being observant, skeptical, or cautious makes you negative, remind yourself that awareness is not the opposite of hope. It is the foundation of wise, meaningful action. You don't have to smile all the time to be a positive person. You don't have to silence your doubts to be considered kind. All you need is to remain awake to stand firmly in your truth, no matter how inconvenient it may be to others. Because at the end of the day, being awake is what keeps you aligned with your own life, instead of being swept away by someone else's expectations. Awareness doesn't rob you of joy, it protects the joy that's real, and it helps you find peace in places that false positivity never could. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.